OCO and greetings. I'm Jay Winter Nightwolf, and this is the Indigenous Peoples American Indians Truce, Jay Winter Nightwolf Live. I'm happy to be here with you tonight, and I've got three of my dear friends, including my producer, with us, and we're gonna be doing the fireside chat. This is what we do once a month. Give you an opportunity to communicate with us directly. So don't go away. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you then. So Leslie, would you give the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes, I will. Let's pause for a moment to acknowledge the traditional stewards of the lands that we reside on, and especially their ancestors, descendants, and all Indigenous people who live now and have ever lived on this place we call Turtle Island. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So tonight is our fireside chat, and we have an opportunity to talk to some of our many viewers and supporters. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, who they are. Let's start with you, Leslie.
Hi, my name is Leslie Fry. I am the executive producer of Jay Winter Nightwolf Live. I'm with Cliff Dye Productions and Native Brown Media. I am from the Choctaw, Catawba, Cherokee people, and I'm really happy to be here this evening.
I'm so happy to see your smiling face, and happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you too.
Now the next is another victim, Judith Foster. How you doing, sweetheart?
I am wonderful, Jay. Thank you. And thank you, Leslie. And joining me, Ramon, thank you. My name is Judith Foster. I am currently the president and creator of the HERO Nurturing Center. HERO stands for Healing, Empathy, Redemption Oasis. And it's a holistic nonprofit, and we use nature as a healing conduit to address trauma and start you on your journey towards healing. And I do a lot of things politically and advocacy and activism in my area and out of my area. And I'm just happy to be here as a guest of the Nightwolf Show.
Okay, so where did I meet you? You look familiar.
You know, Jay, we met at the convention 2016.
Okay, what convention?
In Philadelphia, yeah?
Okay.
Yes.
The Democratic National Convention.
Yes, the Democratic National Convention, to be specific.
And we've been friends ever since.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Next one is my compadre and partner in crime. I got you. Ramon Grimaldi. Ramon is from the Cherokee people. and the Sicilian people. So I'm gonna let you tell your story, and don't get long-winded on me tonight either, okay?
Oh, if I tell my story, that would tend to incriminate me, so I'm going to leave that alone, other than the fact that you knew my father 40 years ago before you ever even knew me, so we have a long family connection. You've been my brother since the first day I laid eyes on you, probably about 20 years ago. Longtime technical director and sometimes executive producer of the radio show back in the day, and again now on WOL and Radio 1.
Okay, thank you, Ramon. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Judith.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
And I'm thankful to the Creator for still being here to do this.
Oh, absolutely. And
Absolutely.
I forgot to mention, I'm Jamaican born, yes, although I am a United States citizen, but I can't leave that out.
Please don't leave that out.
Can't leave that out.
No.
Long live Ja.
Yes, man.
And Ja Rule.
Every time.
Oh gosh.
Every time.
And we're not talking about the rapper or the singer.
No, we're not.
Oh, we're talking about Ja, God.
Yes,
Yeah.
the original Ja.
The original one. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
we don't have any questions right now in the chat. We still have people coming in, but
Okay.
let's start with the subject in particular. Before we go any further, we just want to let our audience know that tonight is actually our last show before 2022.
Yes.
And then we'll be coming back on January the 12th, 2022 with the live show. And also follow Elder Nightwolf on his radio show on WOLD DC on 1460 AM?
1450 AM.
1450 AM. And what is it in the FM station?
Ramon.
95.9 FM and 102.3 HD3.
All right. And if you're not in the Washington, D.C. area, you can actually go online and listen to the broadcast at WLDCnews.com.
All right, do it again.
WLDCnews.com.
Absolutely.
They've got a listen live button there. Just tick it and it works perfectly.
Yeah.
You know, when I was on the other radio station, it was always the American Indian Indigenous Peoples Truths, Justice for All, the most dangerous show on radio. However, since things have expanded and COVID has affected all of us, everybody in the human family, everywhere. So we rebranded the show, and now it's the 360 degrees of the human family's truths. So join me, become a part of this great work that we're trying to do, and let's see what happens. We only got 50 years to get things straight with the environment, and if we don't do that, the planet is going to be totally uninhabitable for human life or any other life. So we need to get busy and reach across the aisle and make this happen. We need to clean up our environment.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's imperative.
I mean, what are we without our land? What are we without it?
We're nothing.
Exactly.
We're nothing. And what we're doing is unsustainable. Yeah.
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 Definitely.
It's all across the world, the globe. You know, I come from Jamaica, where I grew up with, clean rivers and you can still see your feet. And when I go back home now, you can't even fathom the amount of debris that's in the water and accumulated, trash and plastic everywhere. And so, yeah, I'm an advocate of the environment and trees in particular. We don't have enough of those. And the history of the colonialists cutting down trees everywhere they go. And we too have adopted those principles, which is just,
No, it's not good.
No, let's change those things.
Yeah,
yes,
we need
and
to
put people in office who are pushing those types of policies, the policies
Absolutely.
that mean sustainable land, clean
Absolutely.
land,
Absolutely.
fuel that's green, anything that's green oriented. We need to do that because we're not leaving a legacy to any of our children right now. They're going to have nothing. They're going to have nothing. I live in an area right now where the people are not they don't know who they are, so they don't take care of the land.
Mhm.
And they don't respect the land because they don't own the property that they usually rent from or whatever. And you can definitely tell I live in a place that's called the Garden State, and it looks nothing like that.
Yeah. I can
So,
remember 50 years ago when Jersey was the Garden State, and it was so green anywhere you drove through New Jersey. The streets, the highways, the byways, everything was so green.
Wow.
yeah,
But it's not like that anymore.
Oh, no.
no,
And
No.
talking about the Caribbean, Judy, I remember when I went to Jamaica and of course Puerto Rico. That's where my grandmother's from. She's Taino. I can remember when I went to those islands that I could walk outside and pull a mango off the tree and eat it. It was on the tree and it was ripe.
Mhm.
Mangoes you get today are totally different. They're green and you got to wait for them to ripen. And that's not the way the creator intended it to be, because he gave us all of this food and everything else to survive on. But because of those that have this attitude of wanting to be in charge, want to be in control,
Mhm.
the colonialistic powers, it's all about money to them. They don't give a damn about us as a people. Or the
No.
yeah.
Go ahead, Ramon.
And Leslie, you talk about having people in government that are going to really think responsibly about it. We also have to stop the science deniers, because if you look at what happened the other day, tornadoes in the middle of December in Tennessee and Kentucky, they said there has never been that kind of a weather event in December, not only in that region, but in the United States, period. And they said that Tornado Alley, which is usually through Arkansas, parts of Texas, and going up into that region, all the way up into
Oklahoma.
Kansas,
Yeah.
it's gonna move 300 miles east in the next couple of years. Now that's not a 50-year thing. They're talking about in the next 2 years. And you look at what's going on in where I went to school and my grandfather was, Denver, Colorado. They have yet to have their first snow of the year. When I went to school there back in 74, 75, it snowed by the second week of September. And
Mhm.
3 days ago there, it was 82 degrees and people were walking around in shorts and tank tops while they're having blizzards in Hawaii. You tell me climate change isn't real. Stop denying the science and do something about it. We all live here and we'd like to continue to be able to live here.
Yeah.
But not only is it science. When Christopher Columbus opened the doors to slavery in the Western Hemisphere, the people that were kidnapped or bought and paid for, that they brought here, they weren't slaves. They were brought here and enslaved. If you notice, every one of these tornadoes and bad hurricanes, bad storms, they all start off the west coast of Africa and find their way here. The same route that the colonialist people took to bring Africans here.
The triangle trade, Jay.
Exactly. And
Routes.
I did some research on Mayfair, Kentucky, and there were a lot of native people that were slain there. They were massacred there, and they hung a lot of black people there. So is this, you getting what you paid for? You getting it back or what? I think all of us need to, whoever we pray to, that deity that we call God, we need to ask for forgiveness. And I know I'm gonna get a bunch of people that are gonna frown, but for the white people that are here, we need to pray for them too,
Absolutely.
because they have lost their direction. They've lost their responsibility on this planet. And until some of that is satisfied, it'll never be the same. I remember when I was a little boy, it would snow, and the snow would be like 3 and 4 feet deep. I haven't seen that in years living here in Washington, D.C. area. It's totally changed. And one thing I can say, and I will clarify this before I say it, I'm not a Muslim. I'm not a Christian. I'm a spiritual man. But one thing that I can say about that is that Minister Louis Farrakhan made a statement back in 2015. And they asked him, well, what are we going to do about the white man? He says, you don't have to do anything about it. He said, well, you don't need any bullets. You don't need any guns. Watch the weather. And ever since then, the weather's been really, really funky and foul.
Well, Jay, if you remember, the first time he opened that statement and said it was the day that we were there to record both the television and radio interview, and he broke that first with you.
That's right. That's right. And I asked him, I said, you're doing the commemoration of the Million Man March. He said, exactly, brother. I said, well, what about white people? He said, white people are welcome too. He says, because all of them are not bad. Just like all of our black brothers and sisters are not really good people, and our native brothers and sisters. And then he kind of reflected back. He said, you remember what Dr. King said? I said, yeah. He said, what is it? Don't judge me by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. And all of this stuff is coming true now. And people need to wake up and pay attention, because we've had prophets among us. And if you're not listening to the prophets, then those are your warnings. Then you're doomed.
Well, I'd like to interject two things. One, we talked about the effects of climate change on our weather, right? But we haven't talked about two more things: the climate change effects on us as humans, right? The animals, and Mother Earth herself, right?
Right.
And because we're all connected, the interconnectedness. And lastly, Martin Luther King wrote his last book in 1967 before he was assassinated. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? I implore our listeners, viewers, and even you guys, if you've not read that book.
Oh, yeah. I read it. Yeah.
Please read that book. Because he touches on everything that we're discussing right now. He was so prophetic. And yes, we've had prophets. And what do? We've murdered him yet again.
Well, you know what, Judith, what comes to mind to me is one thing you said in the beginning. Read that book. We need to not force, but encourage all of these young brothers that hang on the corners, that are waiting to rob somebody or hit somebody in the head and hurt them. We need to make sure that they must learn about themselves. And in order to learn about themselves, you can't learn from your boy on the corner with you. You need to read a book and find out just who you are and what your position in life is, and your responsibility to all of us, the human family and the planet.
Yeah, but you know, Jay, where that really has to start, it has to start in the family unit. And you know, us as Native people and us as African Americans and people of color, we start with the oral tradition, and you listen to your elders. But we've been separated from that now. The young kids of today, they don't value elders. They don't value what they have to say. Jay, you and I know, point blank, your grandmother was one of the greatest sources of information that you could ever have. We've got mothers that at 16, grandmothers at 36, they haven't even, you talked about mangoes, they haven't had a mango season yet to ripen, so that how can they disseminate that information to their children? But it's got to start there, where your elders enlighten you on how to live, what to do, how to act and respect and know yourself. And then when you know that, then you decide to go to higher learning, even from first grade on, and decide, I want to consume all of this information to enrich myself. But if that culture isn't started in you, you're doomed.
I got all these grandchildren and great grandchildren. I remember one of my grandsons sitting him down one day and telling him, Frank, what are you doing? Grandpa, I'm reading. You're reading? What are you reading? He said, Up from Slavery.
Mm.
I said, why are you reading that book? He said, Grandpa, I know I'm not black. He said, I'm an American Indian. He said, but everything in that book relates to us as a people, not as black people, but as a people, members of the human family. And I looked at him. He says, and to add this to it, Grandpa, every time we come over here to spend the weekend, you won't let us have our cell phones. You won't let us play games on your computer. We can't put the games on your television. What do you do, Grandpa? I said, I take you guys down to Borders Books, and make you buy a book. I said, but you can't buy the book unless I approve of it.
Yes.
He said, but Grandpa, you make us get books that are two grade levels ahead of us. I said, well, you're going to be there soon, so why not be prepared for it when you get there? All right, Grandpa, I got you.
Right.
I made bookworms out of them. And now I got a bunch of my grandkids that have graduated from college. I got a 29-year-old grandson who has a PhD from American University. He didn't have to pay for it. Why? Because he was so smart. Grandpa gave him books to read. And every Sunday evening before they went home, it was my requirement that each and every one of you would stand up in front of everybody else and give us a book report on what you read. Oh, Grandpa, I can do that because I write it. No, I don't want you to write anything down. I want to know what you got in your head from that book.
Yes.
And I think I created something there, but I'm so happy that I did. I wish I could have been everybody's granddad. But that's,
You know what? I have to say this, and I'm sorry, Ramon, I'm just
No,
quite
that's
quickly
okay.
interject, but I know we're talking about education, the level of education and reading books and stuff like that. In some communities, we know that our educational system is not up to par and that we don't have private high schools where children are actually learning particular things. For that matter, there's not money that's been driven into that school to provide them with the things and the resources that they need in order for them to survive in the world and to be a viable person in this world. But one thing that we can be assured of is that everybody pretty much has a phone.
Yes.
And there are plenty of YouTube videos out there, shows like this one, where people are talking and educating about things, history, your past, whatever. What I do want to challenge people to do is just don't take our word for what we're saying. Take something that is very interesting to you about what we discussed this evening and do your own research and make your own assumptions about where you want to go or how much more you want to dive into it. But there is plenty of material out there on YouTube and other resources if you're not reading a book per se that are providing that.
Google is still alive and well.
And this is the thing, I guarantee you, no matter what your socioeconomic standing here in America, you probably have a phone and you have access to Google and you have access to YouTube. If the one thing America has done, it's made sure that everybody has a phone and that you can afford one. So if you don't have a computer, you don't have a laptop per se, you've got a phone. Start doing your research and then hit the libraries if you can. Get yourself a public library card. They're free to anybody. You can sign up to that. Just go and do those things. It's important to educate yourself and just not assume that because someone has money, that it was gained rightfully or that it's going to be sustainable. Learn how to use your finances. We as Black people have never been taught that. That's something that is a very uncommon trait that we have learned about saving money and investing money. Look at how people are successful in the world. And I'm talking about crime. I'm not talking about drugs. I'm not talking about any of that, any of those things that will cause you to lose your life. Look at what's sustainable and what you're leaving your children as a legacy.
You know, as being Native people, I'm sorry, Ramon, I'll say this and then I'll turn it over to you. Native people, we have always been responsible for one thing for our children, is that we must make a way and leave them with the knowledge for our next 7 generations to follow. We got to leave them something that is valuable to them. Go ahead, Ramon.
You know, the thing that makes me mad, and I've had this conversation with kids before because my mom worked 46 years at the DC Superior Court in the Social Services Division Juvenile Branch. So I got to see every bad kid in Washington, D.C. at some time or another. And no, I escaped that because I saw what they went through and I didn't want to do it. But the thing that a lot of them say is the books they've got in school now, I don't want to read those. They're from the 70s. They had those books in school when my parents were there. I said, well, dude, let me ask you a question. If I'm not mistaken, I believe your mom and your dad are smarter than you are. So why don't you start with that book, read it, and then progress? Don't just decide because the date on that book is old that the information is no good. Start there and progress. And now you touched on something, Jay, that you say your grandson said, you know, everything in this book is about Black people. I'm a Native American. This usually happens on fireside chats. We end up touching off something and you see smoke and some fire somewhere. So I kind of want to start a little of that fire. Would you please tell the story that you have told before about the fact of when the colonialists first came here? Then England started development of raw materials and things in Africa. They needed human beings as machinery to start that. So they started with the first slaves in the modern world by taking dark Native Americans and took them over to Africa. And then 80 years later, when they needed slaves back in America to take care of cotton and tobacco, they repatriated dark people back here. Tell that, please.
Ramon, you're opening up a can of worms, as usual. When Columbus came here, and he never came to the mainland. He did all of his work in Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the islands of the Caribbean. And his first voyage back to Spain was filled with spices, stuff they didn't have in Spain or Europe. And in the hold of that ship, he had captured and chained Native American people and took them back to Spain, gave them to the deacons, and they sold these people into slavery and then exported them into Africa. And years later, when England was going through industrial revolution, like you said, they needed people, they needed bodies to work. And they brought them back, not just Native Americans, but the Africans as well, and put them in chattel slavery. They weren't slaves when they got them, but they soon became slaves. Why? Because those Europeans enslaved them. They were free people. They had their own governments in Africa. They had, in America, we had our own civilizations. And by where Leslie is from, there's a place in East St. Louis, 30 miles east of East St. Louis, Missouri. It's called Cahokia, Cahokia. And that was actually the centralized government in the Americas that Native American people would go to. They would send their representatives twice a year to meet there in council. And the history of the Western Hemisphere is so far back that, you know, you would spend a lifetime just trying to trace it back. And I think, Leslie, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Just to correct you, it's spelled Cahokia. For anybody who's going to say something, somebody going to say something from South, it's Cahokia, Cahokia. But let me just say, let me just
Good.
say
Here
this.
comes the fireside. We've got our first controversy. Good. Good.
It looked like
No.
an O because somebody couldn't write it right. Go ahead.
Right. Well, that's probably not even actually the right word, because that was their interpretation of what it was. It's probably not the native word. But my point is this. What has been very interesting for any of us who are searching our roots, that are living the Black experience or the African American experience here in America, and that's what I call it, an experience, because I don't identify with that term or that color, because it means void of color, when I am mixed with so much more than that.
Yes.
And to utilize that terminology, or to even say that I'm African American, just basically diminishes anybody else that came in my history or is a part of my history, and in my great-great-grandparents for that matter, and stuff like that. So I don't like any of these terms or labels that were put upon us. I call those experiences. So if you lived a white life here, then that's a white experience. If you lived a Native American life, then that's a Native American experience, and so forth and so forth, because that is the label that they've given us. Now, the interesting thing about any of us who are searching our history, in particular, when we get past the anything before the early 1800s, we have a difficult time finding our people. And the case is that there were people that were dark, that were Native Americans, let's talk about the Choctaw people, for instance, who were actually captured and enslaved by slave runners because they looked Black. So they just assumed. These were free people, just maybe going to the lake, and they captured it and say, hey, that's a runaway, and they sold them into slavery. And so the question that now comes to mind is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? If you're saying that Columbus came here to America and he enslaved Native people who were a different shades of dark skin, and took them to Africa, and these people lived among the Africans, had children with the Africans, and then brought them back, and now you're identifying them as Africans because that's the term that you've given them, and that's the land that you call them, you've got a big mistake here. And I always tell everybody, don't trust your current DNA. Do not, if you've done a DNA test, do not trust it, because DNA only goes back 10 years from like the perspective of Ancestry or 23andMe. Do your archaic DNA.
That's right.
Go and do that. And that's where you're going to find out where your people came from.
So pardon me. You guys are going really fast, right? So I want to play, school teacher for a second, right? So a couple of things you guys touched on that maybe our audience, who may listen, want to go back to. So the schooling, right? Type of schools. And so as someone who came to this country as a child, and I had experience in schools in Jamaica, and now when I'm adult, right? I've gone through college and my children have gone through college here. First, I'd like to address the school systems, right? And when I was going through it, I had no idea there were so many different systems depending on which state you're in, right? In America, depending also which city that you're in, which school district within that city that you're in. So you could be in one city and have 4 or 5 different school-based type curriculi. Right?
Yeah.
How does that now play when you know that in the schools, I'll use Boston in particular, if it's not the Latin Academy or one of those test schools, right, that you have to grandfather in, you go to public school, right? And so now you're going to schools without adequate windows, may not even have enough books to go around, right? The teacher who is in your classroom really doesn't want to be there. And you see this play out. I'm not saying for all of them, but I'm saying for the majority. And so how does this play in your learning ability? How then can you draw, right, You maybe even haven't eaten that morning because, yeah, you're coming from the inner city. Your mom probably have 10 jobs, maybe 5, maybe on crack, because I'm learning a lot about my community that I didn't realize when I was younger, right? And so this child or children were in this classroom not getting any care at home. And then when you go to your second home where you spend most of your time, most of your awake time spent in school, with someone or a bunch of persons who do not see you, do not care for you. There's no nurturing within those walls. And so they pass you through the system, if you will, if you're not in jail or drop out, right? So then they pass you through the system where you meet persons who have graduated from high school who can't read proficiently or at all, have no conflict resolution skills, right? No critical thinking skills, yes. No reading comprehension, and I'll go on. I won't go on. And so with that said, and I lay that as the foundation, and then we hold these same persons when they're 18, 19, responsible for all those environmental factors that are beyond their control. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now you haven't gotten any tools because the system has taken away the mom and dad because, yeah. So you only have the mom playing dad, right? So the dynamics at home aren't good because angry mom is there because she's downtrodden. She's, depressed, overworked, underpaid. So of course she's going to be these things with society. And so there's another layer where the angry mom is now being demonized, right, by society and the children because you're not spending enough time with them for them to get to know you. They don't know the dynamics with the environment and the world. So I'm going to lay this at your feet because these dynamics and these interconnected issues are at play. But yet still, we hold these people responsible.
Go ahead, Elder. You speak first. And
then one thing, out of all of that calamity and all of that confusion and all of that disappointing life, she's still mom and she's trying to take care of her children. And that's the only one that you got in that household. But she has no support because there's no daddy there. Either daddy just didn't want to be bothered or he's locked up or he got killed on the streets. But go ahead, Leslie, because I got something I want to bring to this. Go ahead, Leslie.
It is my opinion that these kind of school systems were designed for no success. They were designed for failure. If we look at what America has done as far as school systems, let's take residential schools, for instance, where they put Native American children, where they wanted to kill the native and save the man. None of this was designed for their success. None of this.
No.
And this is the same for a lot of our public schools. You have these school systems in an area. And I think, to me, the worst thing that ever could have happened to public schools is standardized testing. The worst thing.
Yes.
When I was a child, there was no such thing as that. Everybody took your test and everything, no matter what your background is. And I came from a single mother. Okay. I went to school every day. Now, fortunately, my mother was very disciplined and she had us, doing everything because she was setting us up for success. But my point is now, when I tutor kids in Spanish, per se, they're taking a standardized test on how to speak Spanish. And my Spanish, which is much more proficient, became such because I did not take standardized tests. I had a teacher who gave a fly-in flit, who taught me things about conversations, not just something that was in a system that was systematic, because what are you learning it for? If you're not learning it to be able to speak it and to be able to conversate with somebody else, why are you there learning it if you're putting it in a standardized testing? So the worst thing ever was standardized testing in order for these public school systems to get funds. By doing this, you're destroying teaching. You're destroying teachers that come there who want their kids to learn. teachers who have a desire to teach children because you're placing them in a square peg in a round hole, basically. And they're tired of teaching because they have to teach a standardized way. They can't go off of that curriculum. So what you have done is you've created a system that dumbs down a community.
I'll follow you, Jay.
That's why I have so much respect for some of my junior high school teachers. Mr. Stefanos, I don't know if you're still living, but I hope you can see what has happened to me. I absorbed everything that you taught us because not only were you, excuse me, an American history teacher, you were a realist, and you gave us point by point examples of how we would have to act after we got out of school. You taught American history, but you taught us about the Native American. Nobody else would teach it. It wasn't in the curriculum. Mrs. Parker, I thank you because you were my math teacher, and you taught us how to reduce fractions and how to add, divide, and subtract fractions. And one of the things I remember from you, Mrs. Parker, was what you always expressed, the multiplicative inverse. And I even use that now. Mrs. Gross, you were a pretty teacher, not only in appearance, but your mind was so beautiful. And I will never forget you. And I can name a whole bunch of teachers. But a lot of teachers today are so frustrated because they're charged with teaching from a test. How the hell are you going to do anything in life with just learning how to pass a test? Before I go, can I please read something to you? We were talking about this whole thing about slavery. From Brown University, one of the professors there wrote, between 2 to 5.5 million Native Americans were enslaved in the Americas, in addition to 12.5 million African slaves. While natives had been forced into slavery and servitude early in 1636, it was not until King Philip's War that natives were enslaved in large numbers. Professor Fisher also wrote in a study, the 1617 to 1676 war pitted Native Americans leader, King Philip, also known as Metacon, and his allies against English colonial settlers. During the war, New England colonies routinely shipped Native Americans as slaves to Barbados, Bermuda, Jamaica, the Azores, Spain, and other countries, and in Northern Africa. While Africans who were enslaved did not know where they would be taken, Native Americans understood that they would be sent to the Caribbean plantations and face extremely harsh treatment from their homes and communities, according to the study. Fear of this fate spurred some Native Americans to pledge to fight to death, while others surrendered, hoping to avoid being sent overseas, the study found. So this is nothing new to any of us, but to the Native American, it's not taught. You can't read it anyway. You have to really do some research, deep research, to find the truth. And that's why I'm so thankful for my brother that's sitting next to me here, Vince Hall, who is my co-host. This man's a researcher. I mean, he could find stuff that nobody else can find. So that's my 2 cents for this part. Who's next? Ramon,
go ahead.
Well, I want to go back to something briefly. I've been checking down in the bottom, and I think it was one of the first comments that Aunt Ing made. And it's very telling. It says that kids today and people today don't seek education because, they're looking more for entertainment because they lack self-awareness. Now, the thing about that is so true. And if you look at it, I call us now third generation BET. We're third generation, the third generation of people now that have been exposed to BET. What that has done, you can see this is a plot and a concerted effort.
Absolutely.
When BET started, it was Black entertainment and Black issue television. There were real issues. There were real news men and women there that gave out real news. There were issues about health. There were issues about faith. There were issues about money. There was education in BET. Well, Bob Johnson lost BET. And it's the truth. He lost it. Part of it was from his divorce, but he lost the network and he lost it to CBS. If you look at what happened immediately, they took all of the news people and threw them out the door. All of the programs that were enriching to us, they got rid of them. And they put on just a cacophony of not only music videos, but shows that they developed where they show women with whorish behavior and they show men with loudish behavior chasing only whores instead of decent women. They showed the absolute worst of us and they shined it and they glorified it. They heavily produced it. So now that's what we go to seek instead of the kind of people that were there that you saw sitting at a news desk. Educated, well-togged, looking well, speaking well, and educating us. They let us have the knowledge from their point of view that was useless. That's not how you get money. You get money by going out here and selling drugs and being a whore and hanging out in the clubs and things like that. That is your path for success. That's what BET has done to us. So again, what I said before, I'll say again and I'll close. Now we've got a grandmother that's 36. You've got the daughter who may be 20 and a 4-year-old granddaughter. All three of those generations are listening to the same music. They're wanting to wear the same clothes. You've got a mother who is also chasing the daughter's boyfriend, and they're going to the same clubs. It is absolutely the ruination of us and our lineage. And thank you, third generation BET, because you've done that.
And
what is sad about it? Oh, go ahead, Judith.
So it speaks to the proposition that I put forth about the schooling, right? And schooling is not just formal. So in America, again, we've conditioned our children to believe that schooling is just if you can afford to go to a 4, 6 year, 8 year college, right? And so, the notion that our elders and ancestors who built these institutions didn't even have an opportunity to participate in such institution, it bewilders me where we give no longer credence to natural abilities, yes, and inherent talent. And so now we have folks that were on the news. If you can buy a piece of paper or buy your way into these institutions, right? I lived in Florida where there's a physician's office in the middle of Coral Springs, one of the richest neighborhoods, yeah? And for 25 years, there was a doctor in the middle of the square, big sign, had lots of patients for decades. Do you know they found out that he had not served one day in a medical school? Yes. So again, these things happen. Let's not diminish college and university, but we know that by design, those places condition us to think capitalistic ways and colonialistic ways, right? And so when we come home, we're different people than when we went out, most of us. And so for me, if the elders can just come back to the communities and gather, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we have to, though, also teach our children to respect the elders. We have to teach our children the old ways about respecting and listening to stories. I find it is very interesting, and you're talking about going to school and becoming college educated. And we're talking about the fact that you were saying if you're lacking that within your public school system, how are then you going to learn about the world and everything? And that's mostly my self-awareness and things that I learned came from professors who didn't have to didn't have to do standardized testing or whatever, who came there and poured into their classrooms with their authentic selves and their authentic ideas and stuff. Those is where I became more self-aware, was in college. But if I'm a child that went to public school and I am a product of standardized testing and I fail or I pass and get by, there's no way, unless college is free, will I ever see college and ever become self-aware, actually learning the truth. They keep those particular things like Black history, Native American history, and all and such. They keep those truthful teachings in a college as an elective course.
And not every college. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? We're talking about colleges. Howard University, and shame on them, was started by General George Howard, who was a cavalryman with the 7th Cavalry out west. And he was a racist white man, whatever. And you got all of these brothers and sisters that have graduated from Howard University, Black brothers and sisters, Native brothers and sisters.
Talk about it, Jay.
Asian brothers and sisters, all brothers and sisters of color, even Kamala Harris. And how dare they not question the person or the reputation of the person that college was named after.
Because that's not the purpose of them going there, Elder. The
I
purpose
know
of them
not.
going there is to have some political affiliation,
Exactly.
and have a title behind them, not to question anything, because it's about the name. It has nothing to do with who it is. It's this prestige of the college that causes people to get jobs and stuff, and that's why they do that.
I know. But not only that, Hampton Institute in Hampton, Virginia was set up for what? To train Native people to be subservient. They never trained them to be doctors or lawyers. They trained them to be cooks and housekeepers. This whole thing about kill the Indian, but save the man. Please give me a break. I mean, I feel that personally.
Aunt Eve says, why do we always stress college and universities and not trade schools? We as a people are skilled people, but we have gotten away from our history.
Oh, that's easy to answer, and it's quick to answer, Jay, and you know this answer just like I do from DC public schools. They had trade schools. They had Phelps. They had Armstrong in DC. And what they found out was they were turning out Black brick masons. They were turning out Black electricians. They were turning out Black plumbers. And a gentleman I know, Mr. Cooper, they turned him out, and he was a Black aviation mechanic out of Armstrong and Phelps trade schools. Yeah. And what they found out was they had to bulldoze those and get rid of them because, excuse me, but the white boys were going to college and making $28,000 a year, and the Black folks were going to trade schools and making $60,000 a year. And they said that can't stand. We're getting rid of that.
So
and
again,
in their mind, it was like we just defeated our own purpose.
So again, my point for bringing all this up to interlock it is, again, how do you find your identity, which you all then started to go in on a different subject matter, right? Identity. So how do you then find your identity if now we've had our elders removed from the house, putting nursing homes, right? Far removed from the children. And now, we're saying, well, the children, we can't talk to them. We're scared of them, blah, blah, blah. But I remember once we were the children that the adults were saying, we're scared of them. We can't trust them. But somehow that information became available. There was some dialogue, right? So I think it's up to the elders now to find the young people where they are. Because like Ing said, it's not about colleges and universities. It's about not just trade schools either. It's about those little meeting houses, right? Whether it be the sidewalks or the cafes that used to happen back in Harlem and in Boston, down in Roxbury, right? On the sidewalk.
Right. Some of the best classrooms are on the corners. And if you can get in between those that are selling drugs and carrying guns and talk to them about who they are, where they came from and that they have a responsibility to the people that brought them here, then maybe there's a chance, But being afraid of these young boys, I'm not. I got a gun. They got guns. I got guns too. But
no, but our parents were afraid. It's not they were afraid of the kids. They were afraid to be around the kids because I'm afraid I'll kill you. That's the way you need to be raised.
That's how I was raised.
Agreed.
Thank you.
I would never. Yeah, I would never. Look.
Would never disrespect your elders.
Let me tell you something. The one time that I decided that I was going to step up to my mother, I was 18 years old. I will never do that again.
Did she clean your clock?
What? I'm 5'7.5". My mother was like 5'3". She look. My mother almost took me out of this world.
Oh, I was about to say, Leslie, if you had a Jamaican mama, you wouldn't be on this show today.
No, look. Once I realized that I wasn't as big as I thought I was, that stopped right then and there. I don't know where that fury of anger came from out of that little bitty person, but my mother woke me up real good.
You found about the phrase big and bad. You were that big, but you weren't that bad. Mama was.
No. My mother.
I had both of my grandmothers were less than 5'4". Boy, but when they spoke, they would look at you and say, "Now I done told you what to do. Get to stepping." And if you didn't get to stepping, they would show you how to walk fast.
Yeah.
Because you would be so afraid of them being on your butt. And don't back talk. Oh no.
No, definitely not.
You got the taste slapped out of your mouth.
You mean a backhand?
Yeah. Well, nowadays that's considered abuse.
Okay, so again,
let me just say, can I just say something? Just say something about that? And I might get a lot of people commenting on this, but there's a difference between abuse and there's a difference between corporal punishment. Corporal punishment, all of us are products of corporal punishment. I am not in therapy because of corporal punishment. I am not an abuser because of
neither am
punishment. I am not broken because
neither
of corporal punishment. Corporal punishment saved my life. And it was the fear of corporal punishment that saved my life.
Oh,
because it was through that, my mother even just looking at me and threatening me was enough to stop me dead in my tracks of doing something that I know that I shouldn't have done. And I am grateful for every spanking that I received because I deserved it.
But my grandmother and my mother would look at you and say, you know better. And that stopped everything.
Yeah.
My mother had
including your blood.
Yeah. My mother had a way of looking at you like, oh God. Did I just cross God?
Yeah. We don't do that anymore. We don't have that because I think people don't know how to hold themselves back anymore because it's just a whole different type of world. But those types of disciplines, and there are some of us who still practice that. But you have what is common here in America and just probably the world overall is a people overreact to certain situations that they shouldn't be overreacting to. They are extremists. And instead of them actually looking at the situation,
like the Karens, right?
Exactly. You're not observing my situation. If I'm getting disciplined in a store because I did something wrong, and then you call 911 on me because I decided to discipline my child in the store, and this is not abuse. Understand? I know what abuse is, and I know what corporal punishment is. When you don't know what that is because you don't know how to be. We were raised that way, and a lot of us of color have been raised that way. I know a lot of Spanish people that when their grandma get the chancla, that's it. They know. So these are not abusive things. These are disciplines that we learn so that we would stay out of trouble because it was to save our lives.
Jay, let me come right up behind you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm glad you made that differentiation between punishment and discipline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I try to learn as much as possible and not punish my children, more so discipline, right?
Mhm.
Because discipline comes from the word, as you all are scholars, that is teaching and guiding and knowledge,
Right.
versus punishment is trying to beat something out of somebody, and we know that it doesn't work. Even
No.
Jay's a veteran. If they get caught by the enemy, torture doesn't work. I'll
No.
say whatever you want me to say, I'll say it. So
But
we know punishment does not work. So I love the fact that you said discipline versus punishment.
Yes, there is a
My-
difference.
One of my sons, my oldest son, I love him dearly, is 54 years old.
Yeah.
And when he was like 4 years old, I took him downtown to buy him a coat because it was just getting ready to get cold. So I'm standing at the counter. He's standing beside me. I said, "Now don't move, okay?" Next thing I know, I see clothes flying. He's running through the racks of clothes going everywhere. So I got over to him, and I picked him up by the back of his shirt and pulled his little pants down off of his butt, and I popped him real good. Now, back then, they didn't call them store detectives. They were called floor walkers.
Right.
This white woman walked up to me and says, "I'm going to have you arrested." I looked at her. I said, "For what?" "That's abusing that child." I said, "I'm going to tell you something. If you don't get out of my face, I got some more waiting for you in my back pocket, because I'm going to give you the same beating I gave him."
But Jay, you got to understand.
Screaming through the store, "Murder, murder, 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 mine." No.
See, this goes back to, and as I said, being an observer of the court system for 46 years, this is all part of the concerted plot. They have removed the authority to correct and mold the child and taken it out of the parents' hands and put it in the court and the government's hands. Just like I tell you about the concerted plot with BET to ruin us in character and ruin us mentally, it's also ruin us in discipline. So what that means is you don't discipline your child. You don't tell your child what to do and what to be. I, as the government and the court, because you talk about indentured servitude, the biggest indentured servitude now on the planet is the United States penal system.
Exactly. And you know what? You talk about that, Ramon. Let's go back on the government. How did this government start? It started with bloodshed, with the murder and genocidal practices that they used against the American Indian and African people. And this is the government that has grown to the point to tell you you can't discipline your child.
And they've used the educational system to bolster that lie. So we're talking about education. They've used it to bolster the lie. They bolster it with the lie of Thanksgiving that you all talked about last week, which was nothing but just a bare ball-faced lie.
Yeah.
They use the lie about, and now I'll say this from God rest my father's soul, which was a Sicilian Neapolitan.
Yeah.
He had that same New York mentality as New York Italians do about Columbus Day. They're freaks about Columbus Day. And I asked him, "Dad, why are you all so up on Columbus and everything?" "Oh, he was a great Italian explorer and discoverer." I said, no. Number one, Pop, listen here. He was Spanish. He was a Spanish Jew from Majorca, Spain, and he never got here to the United States. I said, "I'll prove it to you and I'll show you." And I did. He's like, okay, look. Don't let any of the other family hear about this. They can't take it.
They don't want to talk about it.
So the institutional lies that we're being force fed. I mean, and you take it as far back as the lie about Columbus. He left Spain. He told Isabella and Ferdinand, "I'm going to leave Spain and I'm going to go a direct way to get into India to get spices and cloths and riches and stuff like that." And he bumped into America on the way because he didn't know it was there, which was a lie because his navigator was black and he was a Mali sailor. And that's why Ferdinand gave
Eldrisi. Yeah.
Yep. And that's why Ferdinand gave him that guy, because he's black. He'll get them all killed. I can't stand him, and I don't have to worry about hearing Isabella again tell me about this Columbus. So when that happened and they said he bumped into this continent and thought that the people there were Indians, and that's how we got the name. But here's the lie, and I'll say this quick and I'll get off. How is it possible that he thought he was in India when that country didn't exist in 1492? It was called Hindustan. It did not become India until the British got there 300 years later.
And you know what else that people don't know is that every ship that Ferdinand gave Cristobal Colombo, I'll call him by his real name, to sail, all of those ships were condemned from sailing. And who was his crew? He opened up his prisons and mental institutions and said, here's your crew. He was trying to get rid of the undesirables, and Columbus too.
And those are the pilgrims that came over on the so-called Mayflower, right?
Right, exactly.
They were pedophiles, and they practiced bestiality, and they were tax evaders. That's why they came here, not for freedom of religion. Again, as long as the institution perpetuates the lie, then it becomes the truth. And you perpetuate it by putting it in your run educational systems, and then you make people victims of it, not enlightened or educated, but victims of the lie.
Can I say something too about why we are? Go ahead.
So Ramon just proved my point, right? Where I said we do not educate, especially in these universities and colleges, especially the truth, right? And then we blame these same people when they reach maturity for not wanting to vote, not wanting to participate in the very system, right? So
they were molded that way.
Can I say something too?
Yeah, but one thing, let me just run this. This only take a second. I always remember when I left out of my father's house, when I was growing up in his house, he would always do this. Don't go out of my house and embarrass me. I did it twice, and I had hell to pay. I couldn't sit down the first time for 3 days.
Because you can be 45, but you embarrass me, I'm going to beat you like you 5.
Right, exactly.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Can I say something about the fact that why Italian Americans are so enamored with Columbus Day? Understand that when they first came here, they were likened to Black people, just like the Irish. And so when they were given a day, a parade, like other people were given a parade, they hopped on the Americanization or ideology of what Columbus was, or what we've been told, that lie. And that's why they're so enamored with that day, when they don't honestly know the truth about who this person was. So we're providing the truth. You know, there are plenty of Italian Americans or Italians that are famous that we could have a parade for, but Columbus is not the one.
That's
Columbus
right.
is not the one.
But I tell you one that I got the deepest respect for and loved him for the first time I met him was your father, Ramon. I had the deepest respect and love for that man. God,
he was a freedom fighter. He really was.
And
he was the first person to hire Black people in management in department stores in DC. I learned stuff about him after he was dead by the people that benefited from him being alive.
And I was one of them. When I used to work through department store chains, I worked for a cosmetic company, right? He formed a group called BRAG. It's called the Black Retail Action Group. Now, I'm not Black, but I became a part of that group because I admired and loved this man so much, and that goes back to what I say. It's not about the color of your skin. It's about what's in your heart. It's how you treat me. So, Leslie, we're 15 minutes over.
We are actually 10 minutes over. This is a very good conversation. We didn't get very many questions this evening, but that's okay. We have some great people here that are providing and lending to this conversation tonight. And I'm going to miss you all, but I hope you all come back in 2022 when we come back. Right before we go off the air, and we've got about 5 more minutes, I just want to do one more promo about us coming back in January and about the radio show. So let's stand by. We'll be with you in just a few minutes to end the show. Love you too, Sandra. Hi.
Yeah, we love you. We love you.
Love you.
Yes.
Don't tell Ramon Columbus was Florida.
All right. So, Elder, would you like to close out for this evening?
Yes, I would. I appreciate and I love all of you for supporting our efforts in 2022 and 2021. We'll be back in 2022. But this Sunday on my radio broadcast on Radio 1, which you can go to the internet and just type in WOLDCnews.com and hear my show. I'm going to have another one of our brothers, a man that's an opera singer. He was born in Chihuahua, Mexico, and he's known the world over. He was trained by Placido Domingo. He appeared with him on quite a few of his performances. I'll show you the album cover. He was here tonight at the house because he thought this was Thursday, but this is Wednesday. He'll be back here at my house tomorrow. And I want to invite all of you to tune in at 6 o'clock East Coast time to WOLDCnews.com. Sunday, that is. And this is my brother, Jesus Daniel Hernandez. He's a U.S. Army veteran and a real good friend. He's like a brother to me. So you'll get an opportunity to meet with him via the radio show. And sometime in January, he's going to be on the television show with us. I want to thank you all of you. And to all of my Christian brothers and sisters, I want to say Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. To my Jewish brothers and sisters, Happy Hanukkah. And of course, the holiday for the Muslims is coming up. Why
And
do
Kwanzaa.
and Kwanzaa? And why do I cross over all of these boundaries? Because yes, I am an American Indian. But first of all, I am a card-carrying member of the human family. And to me, that's more important than any nationality. And I want to thank you, my sister Judith, so much for being on with us. Will you come back again, sweetie?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And to my my very good friend, my compadre in crime, Ramon Grimaldi, you will come back. I control those strings. You're the puppet.
Yes, brother, no problem.
And,
You are exactly correct.
And also my brother sitting over here, my co-host who did not appear on the screen tonight. Get over here so they can see your face. This is my co-host.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Leslie.
Hi,
What's up,
Vince.
Ramon? Hello, young lady. How are you this evening, Miss Judith?
I am well, thank you.
It's an honor to meet you.
And
Honor
this brother-
here.
This brother's Piscataway Indian.
Cherokee and Catawba.
Yeah, all of that. And some more good stuff. But to you, Leslie, I cannot thank you enough for being patient with me. Because anybody that deals with me know you got to have some patience. I can tell you the last nerve fall off.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I have a question for Leslie when you're finished, Jay.
Okay. So Leslie, I love you, baby sis.
Love you too.
And thank you so much for being a part, the major part of all we do. And I appreciate you and tell Sean that I love you. And I love
Okay.
her.
Okay, I will. I will definitely do that.
Leslie, you gave out some information about the archetypal DNA that you should do. How would one go about that? And what is it if you've never heard that terminology before?
So archaic DNA is actually
Archaic.
DNA that goes back beyond the classification of races.
Yes. Yes.
It goes with the origin of who your people are. There is a free website that you can go on called GEDmatch. If you've already done your DNA, if you've gone through any of that stuff like that, you can go on GEDmatch and find it. The wonderful thing about GEDmatch is that it was created by a geneticist who wanted a little bit more than what Ancestry was providing or 23andMe was providing. Remember what I told you, that Ancestry and 23andMe goes only by your mitochondrial, your mother's side of the family, and it only goes back 10 generations.
Right.
With GEDmatch, it goes a lot further. You upload your information into GEDmatch from Ancestry or from 23andMe, and you'll go back and look at it, and they categorize it, and you can go back and look. An interesting thing that I found out is that my phenotype and how I look, I am living the Black experience. However, I know that I am Native American because my DNA is connected with two people who were identified as the original Native Americans of what we call Turtle Island. And that is the Kennewick man and also the Clovis child.
Yes, yes, yes.
So,
Thank you,
question:
Ann.
can you still do this if you've not done the Ancestry or the 23andMe?
Well, it's hard for the geneticist to go back and trace your bloodline without that DNA.
Okay.
So,
That's what it says here.
Leslie
Yes.
and Judith, talk about this later.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stay on the broadcast and we'll talk about it. Thank you, Ann. I
Hey,
appreciate
one
that.
one thing left, Jay. Your website for the radio program is nightwolfradio9000@gmail.com.
Thank you, Ramon.
Oh, yes. We
Yeah.
gotta put that in next time. Post.
Okay.
All right.
So, to all of you that are watching tonight, I wish you all well. I know this is a crazy time with this COVID thing, and now this other thing. Protect yourselves and protect those that you love. Go and get your shots, your vaccinations. Go and get them. They're not going to kill you. They're going to protect you. And all of this rhetoric that this fool that was the president keeps putting out, ignore him. He's just as dumb as the day is long. He don't know the first thing about it. If he was so much against the vaccine, why did he have the vaccine before anybody else had it? And why would he not tell the American people that he was infected with this COVID thing? So think about it. Use your common sense. It will serve you well to reason and understand what is going on and what is happening to the human race. And you're going to have a bunch of idiots and fools out there just like Donald Trump. Everything he said that came out of his mouth, even today, is a lie. So, now that that's over with, I love you all. And I'll close out with these words from my Cherokee part of the family. Danada, Kauai, Wado. I love you all of you. Even those of you that make it almost impossible to love. I love you anyway. So deal with it. I'll talk to you January.